We're here at the NV and SDN Americas event in Las Colinas, just outside of Dallas. Today I'm talking with Gary from Netscout. Hi, Gary. We're talking about cybersecurity, and Netscout just published its recent threat report. Maybe you could give me some highlights from what you found.
Sure. So first of all, Netscout has a long history of tracking botnet activity, and we publish reports on DDoS attacks. Is pretty well known. Last year we saw huge headlines around this massive 1.7 terabit per second attack, record-shattering like nothing anyone's seen before. This year we have a very different picture. We're not seeing attacks on that scale anymore. Where we're really seeing the sweet spot, I should say, from a attacker's perspective, is the 1 to 400 gigabit per second attacks. In fact, we saw a 776% increase in attacks in that size range in the last 6 months. And make no mistake, those attacks are still big enough to take small countries offline.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about trivial attacks by any stretch, but of course, more importantly, we're seeing an increase in frequency. So about a 40% increase in the frequency of attacks over the last 6 months as well. Beyond that, we've seen weaponization of IoT devices. We're going to talk a lot about IoT devices today. I think it's a hot topic on everyone's mind. We know that they are proliferating rapidly. We know that, for instance, if you go back about 3 years ago, you may remember there was an attack that brought down GitHub and PlayStation Network and hundreds of other companies. Right?
Yeah, it was pretty big.
And that was an attack targeting Dyn, a provider of domain name services for those companies. Right? What's really interesting is that was based on the now infamous source code Mirai, which was written by basically some college students, right, who were trying to take out their competitors. Right? Now that's out in the wild. Well, what's interesting is that 3 years later, our security research team is tracking on the order of 20,000 variants of that code per month.
Per month?
Per
so
month.
Not even per year? Oh, goodness.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yes, indeed. So, that's sort of some of the high-level trends that we've seen.
It's really interesting, too, because I remember that attack. I remember that it all came through IoT devices. That's what really woke us up in terms of saying, hey, these things are vulnerable. These things are dangerous. When somebody can turn these into, IoT devices into weapons, it really does threaten not just, any one network, but the whole internet.
That's correct.
How long is it taking people to weaponize an IoT vulnerability?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the research revealed some pretty shocking statistics. On average, the Mirai code and its variants can infect an IoT device within 60 seconds of it connecting to the network.
Wow.
And of course, that's just the infection stage. Right. So then creating the botnet and weaponizing it, and I'm talking about exploiting a new vulnerability. Right. So from the day a vulnerability is discovered until it's weaponized in an IoT botnet, it takes about 5 days now.
Wow.
So that's faster than most vulnerabilities are patched.
I'm just extrapolating here, but what about all the IoT devices that consumers and enterprises are deploying?
Absolutely. It's becoming a bigger and bigger problem, right? So as we know, something on the order of 7 or 8 million IoT devices are powered up every day. And what's interesting is, of course, those are being weaponized. So we talk about now the weaponized home. Right? So all these devices people have in their homes, I mean, I'm sure you have some, I have some,
absolutely.
Everybody does, whether it's your video cameras or your set-top box, your router, even Apple software is being compromised now. And what's really interesting about that is that for every one device that's connected directly to the internet, there are another 20 that are behind a firewall. And in particular, we're talking about the enterprise now. Right? So when you think about all of these IoT devices on enterprise networks that are behind the firewall, we've already found malware that is actually exploiting these devices behind the firewall, weaponizing these devices, and then using those to not only attack external networks, but to take down the internal network as well.
Wow.
So if you think about an enterprise network where you have, kind of a hub and spoke design, maybe you have satellite offices, you have data centers, you have cloud resources, headquarters, right? So you typically will have routed connections between those. So we've actually seen malware that will target the routers that connect the WAN links between the different sites.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A lot of enterprises are now outsourcing security,
Right.
right? Well, if the devices on the inside of the network are infected and they take down the routers, which are what get you to that outsourced security mechanism,
Right.
now you can't even protect yourself. So it's a really interesting conundrum, and it's providing a lot of new challenges for defenses across all networks.
Another thing I'm hearing about is this thing about college students creating botnets and then turning around and attacking their own universities. What's going on there? That is wild.
Yeah, well, don't want to take an exam?
Right.
Hire a botnet, right? So
incredible.
absolutely that's happening. So
Huh.
in fact, just recently our Netscout SOC was involved in defending a university against attacks targeting its testing platforms and curriculum. So we know this is happening. It's a big problem, but not just universities. Really, thanks to Mirai and its variants and other publicly available software, anyone can build a botnet, and better yet, you don't even have to build them. You can buy them. Right? So there are many of these SaaS-based attack tools, right? So it's DDoS for hire or botnet for hire services. And in fact, those are so cheap and ubiquitous, you can hire them for as little as $5 an hour.
Wow.
They will actually take down your target as just a demonstration that they can be effective before they even take any money. They compete against each other, so they now offer service level agreements.
Great.
Which is, we laugh about it, it's serious stuff, but you have to have a little levity. So you think about the botnet for hire.
Yeah.
If the SLA is that if they don't take your target down, they'll refund your stolen credit card, no questions asked.
Interesting. Really interesting. Well, and it's interesting too, because it's like I guess where this is all leading, and this is what we've been talking about at this conference, is this conference is all about the evolution of the network,
Yep.
Going from virtualization to cloud native to eventually into 5G networks, and how that's changing everything in its path. So when we're talking about IoT and 5G, how does a service provider deal with this escalating threat? Because there's going to be an escalating number of devices, I would imagine.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look, we're already well beyond the point where we have more IoT devices than humans on the planet.
Right.
And of course, that is a steep curve that's escalating. And as you rightly pointed out, with virtualization and with 5G technology, we're going to see, again, another massive explosion in the number of network resources, the number of edge compute devices, right? And IoT is going to be a big part of that. And those edge compute devices themselves will be targets and may very well be weaponized. So I think ultimately, it's something that I often talk about, which is when you're rolling out a new technology, you can be proactive in the security or you can be reactive.
Right.
And with many new technologies, and IoT is a great example, we did the same thing with 4G, we did it with Wi-Fi, where we rushed to get the technology to market. And the same thing with cloud, right? Get out there first. We want to capture the economies of scale and the cost reductions, right?
Right.
And then security is an afterthought.
Right, yeah.
Let's not do that again.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that we bake security into the solutions up front. And I think that's really the critical piece, right? We need to understand the environments we're going into and make sure that we have the right technologies in place and the right capabilities baked into the network if we're going to get ahead of this one.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing the drama of the new threat report and all that we have to look forward to, and also talking about the solutions involved.
My pleasure. Thank you.